All right, I have a very special guest joining me on this special broadcast, Professor Makarand Paranjape, and also joining me is my colleague Karthikeya Sharma. Thank you both for joining us on this broadcast. If I can come to Professor Paranjape first. Professor, your thoughts on the, what some would say, historic landmark verdict of by the Supreme Court on the Ayodhya dispute. What might be the import of this judgment and the implications of it going forward as well?
I think it's an extraordinary judgment, and everybody in India, right, left or center, should welcome it. It brings to an end a very old dispute. In fact, a dispute which was exacerbated by, I would say, some mischievous elements, and unnecessarily, I think, divided the country as never before. It's time to reunite and to come together again, both with equanimity and magnanimity. I think the most important aspect of this judgment is that it accepts for the first time, I was just reading the judgment, I just started reading it, it's very long. It accepts for the first time the historic circumstances under which the so-called Babri Masjid was built. It also accepts the fact that there was a prior structure there based on the Archaeological Survey of India. And obviously, people worshipped Lord Ram there for a very, very long time. So whether you regard it as his actual birthplace, whether he was a real person or a god or a mythological figure, is besides the point. It's really a matter of the public faith of a majority of the people in India. Secondly, I think the court has also recognized the rights of the so-called minority community by giving the Sunni Waqf Board a 5-acre plot, which is much larger than the disputed 2.7-acre plot in another area. Now, if you know anything about Muslim theology, you would know that there is no such thing as a sacred site. Even the graves of the Prophet were not regarded as sacred. So for a Muslim, they can worship anywhere. And there's no such thing as the specific place, what we call a sthala mahatmaya in Sanskrit among the Hindus. So for a Hindu, a particular place is sacred and it's non-negotiable, but a Muslim can actually worship anywhere. At the same time, the court has recognized that the demolition of the structure was illegal, which is also very important because we know that people took the law into their own hands and out of passion or whatever brought it down. So I think the judgment is balanced. I think it paves the way for harmony and mutuality between the communities, between the disputants. I also heard that the Waqf Board, the All India Muslim Personal Law Board isn't satisfied, but the Sunni Waqf Board appellant has not said he's dissatisfied. So I think it augurs well for the future. And one more thing I wanted to really bring to the notice of our viewers, which is very important, is that the court has directed a separate trust to be set up for this Ram Mandir, the proposed Ram Mandir. I think that's wonderful because this is the time, actually to include everybody, all those who have faith in Ram and all those who will benefit, which of course include the local people, Hindus and Muslims alike, on one platform, rather than give it to any one akhada or any one group, even those who had been leading the fight for the Ram Mandir. I don't think it should be given to any individual group, but it should be a nationwide platform where everyone can come together. And I think this temple should be a symbol of national unity, as well as the recognition of our cultural and civilizational ethos, which was in a way denied or clouded under the overwhelming state narrative, which we call secularism for so many decades.
Indeed. Karthikeya, Professor Paranjape seems to indicate that this is a watershed moment in Indian politics. Would you say that this judgment has changed Indian politics forever?
See, there are two things here. I think court, in its wisdom, has not deprioritized the idea of faith. Generally, if you go by the language of the state of 80s and 90s, the whole issue was that historicity versus faith. And what is faith without people? Now, in this context, the faith has been given primacy. Now, the court has also gone into records, historicity, dates, but it has acknowledged the fact that the people believed in it. Now, I would like you to recall that when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister in 2007, when the dredging was on, when DMK was in power in Tamil Nadu, there was an affidavit which was sent to the Supreme Court, and it created public outrage because the affidavit mentioned Lord Ram as a mythological figure. The same government had to rewrite the affidavit and said that Ram is not a mythological figure, and since then the dredging of Ram Setu did not take place. So this division of faith versus historicity or de-hierarchization of faith as a system of knowledge in context of historicity has been balanced by the order of the Supreme Court. I think the most important facet of this judgment lies here. And secondly, Centre has become a party to it, which is an important part of the judgment. The trust under the aegis of the central government will function, which also tells us that the court has recognized the primacy of Lord Ram as the deity to which the land belongs, and the land of the deity will be taken care by trust under the government of India. So that is the second most important part. But I think the most important part of this judgment is that faith of people, their belief, has not been discarded or set aside by the court as mere superstition, because that is part and parcel of, I would say, colonial legacy, where knowledge in terms of belief system was deprioritized by our colonial masters by opposing it to scientific methodology.
Absolutely. Professor Paranjape, I want to take you out of the realm of law and judiciary and into the realm of politics for a change. Now, in your estimation, would you agree with me when I say that this verdict fulfills another political or poll plank of the BJP? We've seen the BJP abrogate Article 370. We've seen the Ayodhya verdict this morning. Now, that leaves us with the third issue of the Uniform Civil Code. So where does India and the BJP go from here?
You're absolutely right. Just to invoke something that Karthikeya said a moment ago, I said this, I would say that this restores the faith of the electorate in the promises that the BJP made. One of the promises, as you said, was to resolve this dispute, get a temple there, and they're halfway to doing that. But the thing that I think we need to emphasize is how maturely they did it. They did it with great deal of patience, political savvy, as well as, you know, the marshalling of their cadres in such a way that no untoward incident happened so far. So if you look at the breaking, or if you look at the demolition of the masjid, 6th December, I remember it very clearly, in 1992, 6th December, I think it was.
Yes.
And that was obviously a watershed, a violent moment, obviously, and a lot of untoward incidents, riots and bloodshed did happen around that. But in the build-up of this temple, the construction of the temple, I think the ruling party has behaved very responsibly. And in fact, the Congress response, I thought, was also interesting. They said, oh, they've lost a poll issue now. And that's right. That's a sporting way of looking at it, that let this no longer be a dispute. Let's move ahead. And I think that triple talaq, as you said, Uniform Civil Code will take a little more time. But one India, one law, one nation, and so forth, and yet diversity. If you see this as one of the ideological planks of the BJP, yes, I think they've made, and you forgot to mention, the integration of Jammu and Kashmir. So I think all these were major steps into, towards fulfilling some of these promises. And I think they would increase the faith of the electorate in this government as, people who can actually get things done.
Indeed. Professor Paranjape, you mentioned a date, 6 December 1992. So there are several other dates in recent contemporary history. So how would you trace the journey of the BJP in particular, say from the time L.K. Advani took out the Rath Yatra, and then, as you mentioned, 92 happened, and then on the 30th September 2010, we saw the Allahabad High Court judgment on trifurcating the 2.77 acre land, and now this morning's judgment. So how would you describe the journey from the Rath Yatra to today?
I think the BJP has come a very long way from being on the margins of Indian politics. They've not only occupied center stage, but today I would think they have actually come very close to decisively changing the master narrative, the narrative of Nehruvian secularism, socialism, and minoritarianism, if I may use these three terms, which prevailed in India for so long, was not entirely shattered. It was destabilized after NDA won, but there was no real alternative. And even, I would say, Modi 1.0, that is 2014 to 2019, I don't think as much was done in that first phase of Modi's prime ministership as has happened in rapid succession in Modi 2.0. And I think the decisive turn has taken place in Indian politics, where an alternative is not only being offered to the people of India, but is actually being established. So I guess, as far as an intellectual responsibility is concerned, it's no longer sort of marginal, pushing this narrative that's important, but now, in fact, interrogating its successes and balancing it out, because I think the Advani momentum as well as ideological oppositionalism is no longer needed now that the party has prevailed and its agenda is being accepted. I think a new form of reconciliation and inclusiveness is required. And I think I see that in the statements of the Prime Minister, of the Home Minister, as well as the Defense Minister. I see that very clearly in Sarsangachalak Mohan Rao Bhagwatji's statements about how to take this verdict with sagacity, equanimity, and how to maintain the peace, peace and law and order in society. So this inclusive Hindutva is what I see as the change from an embattled and oppositional Hindutva of the 1990s.
Professor Paranjape, you make many valid points there, but I want to take a moment to welcome Lord Meghna Desai back in this discussion. Lord Meghna Desai, as Professor Paranjape said, this augurs well for Indian polity. Would you agree?
Yes, in a sense. What my friend Makaran was implying was BJP will stop behaving a law-breaking to a lawmaking. Over the 30 years between the Advani Rath Yatra and 2019,
sure.
There has been a lot of change. BJP is now more confident of itself that it has changed the mood music, and now it can become a truly national party pursuing national interest.
Right, and Professor Paranjape, if I can come back to you one more time on the discussion. Now, looking ahead, we mentioned about Article 370, Jammu and Kashmir, Ram Temple and Uniform Civil Code. But if I were to ask you to look in the crystal ball, so to speak, and look ahead, what are the next few challenges for Prime Minister Modi, especially given the fact that the economy is not doing so well? So where does this government, Modi 2.0, go from here?
I think I wanted to just applaud what Lord Desai said, from law breaking to law making. I think that's a brilliant phase. Thank you for that phrase. I think that Modi has many bigger things on his mind, on his plate. I consider him a visionary leader, and he really wants to make a new India. Certainly economics is a very major component of this new India, but there are many other components which we can't ignore. It's an India which is much more confident and proud of itself, and wants to take its legitimate place on the world stage. So I think these are his ambitions, these are his aspirations, and he wants to actually lift up, as you rightly said, he's changed the mood music, but I think he wants to lift up the mood of the nation. And I don't think they're going to ignore the economic issues, and we really face challenges, especially when it comes to jobs and skilling our huge workforce to get our demographic dividends and so forth. But actually the motor, the engine of, I would say, the nation has now changed gears, you know. And so what I think will happen now is a whole series of interconnected moves, reforms, transformations, each feeding into the other and, in a sense, changing our place on the world stage.
Professor, I wanted to ask you, looking at the balanced judgment, the balanced reactions coming in, notwithstanding what the All India Muslim Personal Law Board said there, but on balance, would you agree that this brings out the finest in Indian democracy? Would you say that?
Yes, I think so. I think that the judges were of diverse ideological persuasions. There was one dissenting note. It wasn't revealed who it was. But even then, they came together. There was a consensus. There was, coming together of people of different persuasions. And we've seen in the last few months an extraordinary, I would say, marking of how the judiciary, the legislature and the executive have all come good in India. If that's not a sign that Indian democracy is thriving and healthy, what else is there? Each of these branches of the government have demonstrated their capacity, in a way also to act independently, to offer checks and balances. And remember, Article 370 was abrogated or changed through the Rajya Sabha, where the BJP is not in majority, as well as the Lok Sabha. So all the democratic processes were put, into action rather than demolishing the mosque as took place a long time ago. So definitely, I think this augurs well for India, as a functioning republic, not as a functioning anarchy, or not as a, what should I say, an area of darkness, in fact, as Naipaul called it once. And from there to a million mutinies, I think we have gone, one more step from there. From darkness to the mutinies to now, I think, some kind of cohesion and national purpose without compromising, the divergence of opinions, dissent, and the multiplication or the multiplicity of voices.
Lord Meghnath Desai wanted to come in?
Yeah, I think the All India Muslim Personal Law Board's reaction adds to the democratic nature of the decision.
True.
We shouldn't have 100% agreement. There are people who will not be happy, and they should be free to express their opinion. They may even, I don't think they should, but they may even pursue one of the two paths that are still available. But there is one thing. This has been at last settled legally and as amicably as is possible to do it in a country which abounds in differences. And what is interesting to me, sort of retrospect, is of all the things people say against East India Company and all that, the legal processes which the British gave to India are still working, and we still rely on that process. The whole thing is done in a proper legal fashion because there is a tradition.
True.
And I think we ought to kind of pay a little, little tribute to the British for.
All right, fair point. On that note, I want to thank Professor Makarand Pranjape for joining us live from Shimla. Appreciate it, and thank you once again.